We're back on The Big Show. It's Alex Belfield here on Broadway, and we're in one of the most glorious dressing rooms here, in one of the most showbiz performances here on Broadway, and it's called Billy Elliot, and the star is a lady I've been trying to track down for years and years and years. Haydn Gwynne, how are you?
I'm very well, and I think you're overselling it on the glamorous dressing room, or were you being ironic?
I was being slightly ironic, because there's nothing glamorous backstage about musical theatre, is there?
Not usually, and this is smaller than most, I have to say, but it is a gorgeous theatre out front, so I guess the money's where it needs to be.
What is it like being you right now? Because you were always a big star. You've done loads of stuff before Billy Elliot, and then you got the lead in the West End, and then suddenly the call comes in to come across to Broadway.
Well, it didn't happen quite as fast as that. Yeah, I suppose I knew it was a technical possibility, but I didn't really expect it to happen. And then they started talking about it early in the year, but it was quite difficult to make it happen because of the whole sort of rules with American equity and the whole thing of letting. So it was actually a long, agonising will she, won't she come over, going on for months. But when then the confirmation came, it was, yes, then a great sort of rush. I had about 4 weeks to transport my whole family and make a life out here and find schools for my sons and start work. So I hardly had time to think about it, and it's been over 2 years that I haven't done the show, so I feel I'm in a sort of time warp, having been whisked back to this show again. It's quite strange, but exciting too.
Did you even have to consider the question, will you come to Broadway?
Yes, because of the logistics for the family. I have 2 young sons and a partner who will probably, we realised wouldn't be able to stay with us. So we talked about it, even though it was a theoretical question at that point. We took sort of 24 hours and batted it back and forth. But, we did come to the decision quite quickly that, yeah, if it happened, we should try and make it work. I mean, it's not the kind of opportunity that comes round every day, and let alone the whole thing of bringing a musical to Broadway. Broadway is the home of that art form, and Billy Elliot is such a particularly British product in so many ways. The people who are working on it, the subject matter, the style of it, what it's about politically, that it was just such a fascinating thing to bring this very British musical to the original home of the musical. And would it work? Would it stand up on its, as it is over here?
As for you on stage doing the role, which I've just seen this afternoon, does it make any difference whether you're in London or on Broadway?
Well, there are more, I suppose the first thing to say, on lots of levels, there are more similarities than differences, because they're both big cosmopolitan cities, and so much of what we understand about the world politically is global these days. However, inevitably certain things work better in one country than the other, or sometimes there are certain jokes that work even better here, and I can't sort of quite work out why. So, we've had to make certain adjustments just for clarification, but not as many as I expected. I have to say, it's still very much, with a few very, very slight adjustments, it's still very much the show that people saw in London.
And I can't believe anybody hasn't seen the film, but if they haven't, it's the story of a young boy from the northeast who wants to be a dancer, and his family basically don't. And then stuff goes on with politics and Margaret Thatcher. Do you think they get that? Do they understand how bad it was for us during the 80s and 90s with the miners' strikes?
No, they don't. I mean, obviously, the miners' strike of 1984 was a huge, seismic political event, which ramifications which have, carried on through to this day. And most Americans do not know what a huge thing that was. I mean, some of the film that you see at the beginning of the show has been adjusted, the voiceover, to, in a way, educate the audience a little bit more to that understanding. But what you've brought up is one of the great big differences between the film and the musical, and the theatre show is very much transformed. It's not just, here's the story of a film with a bit of music. One of the surprising things about it is how much more political the musical is than the movie, and that's partly practical. It's partly because the movie, although of course it became a huge hit, started out as a small, low-budget English movie, and with the best best will in the world, you cannot represent the miners' strike with sort of 20 odd extras. Inevitably, that side of it is a sort of backdrop to the story. But of course, on stage, and we have a very, very big company, you can represent the miners' strike abstractly with your ensemble. And so it's a huge part, very much to the fore. Threaded in with Billy's individual story is this very important story of the community and what happened at that time. And that's one of the big shifts and something that you get much more of in this show than the film.
And Haydn, help me with this. In front of me were 3 children, all under 10. Should I be uncomfortable seeing them sat there? Because this isn't a kid's show, is it?
No, it isn't a kid's show, although it is a show that children absolutely love. I mean, I wouldn't say bring tiny children, but partly, I can't tell you exactly why, partly because they are seeing, kids love watching other children, and of course they're watching children do extraordinary work. You know, obviously the Billy, what he has to do is incredible. It must be one of the most demanding roles ever written for the musical theatre in terms of the numbers and the choreography he does. But also there are lots of other guys. I have a whole team of ballet girls who have a huge amount to do in the show, and they love, they just love watching that. But also I've never worked on a show before which can engage people on so many different levels. And so it does appeal, of course, to the musical theatre goer, but it also, I've got loads of people who are sort of would count themselves as very sophisticated theatre goers for whom the musical is not particularly their thing, but they love it, or your very ancient, very right-wing aunt from wherever, from the home counties will seem to love it. The very young, it's quite extraordinary that it just works. It has, there's so much going on. It's choreographically, it's very original, and there's lots of huge moments in the show, which in another show, if you had 1 or 2, you'd be grateful. Well, you've got loads in each half, and that there really is something, you can just appreciate it on different levels.
We should say, though, the St. Mary Poppins, it has got quite a lot of bad language in it, and if you're afraid of that or if you're offended by it, probably give this a miss, because it is quite strong, because it needs to be. It
does need to be. It was one of the things that I thought would be changed a lot more over here, because although there are of course a lot of there's the sort of sophisticated cosmopolitan side of New York and America, but there is also a much sort of bigger, perhaps conservative base, and I thought there might be lots of arguments with the producers about cutting back on the language. We have a tiny bit, but I have to say I've been really surprised, and the feedback they were getting during previews was actually people didn't really care, and they see, because it's very real, because it's put across, because they're identifying so strongly with the experiences that the people are going through, in the same way that you don't in a movie, you accept because it's part of life. So I would say, unless you're incredibly puritanical, I would say don't be put off it for that reason, because people do know how to put things in their context. I mean, my kids came when they were very young, and they didn't go home and start, it just sort of goes over their heads, really. So I'd say don't be put off by that.
And as for the costumes, was there ever a point when you said, no, I'm not wearing that?
No, I can't pretend I didn't blanch in the dressing room when we were trying. I mean, when you start out with a musical in the original production, you do have quite a lot of say, and some of the way the costumes weren't necessarily in the original plan. They became more dance gear, and we realised that we could get away with more fishnets and lycra, because I'm tall and slim, and you can get away with it. I think one of the moments, the most horrifying moments, is there's a sort of curtain call. It's not part of the show. It's a sort of finale, a sort of danced curtain call where everybody turns up with tutus, including the miners over their boiler suits. But when they told me I was wearing a tutu, I was like, well, okay. And they said that everybody else would be wearing a tutu as well. I went, okay. And what I didn't know, and I have these sort of fishnets and bright pink leg warmers up to, which is a bit of a theme for her. But what they didn't tell me was that I would be the only adult wearing a tutu that was sort of like the children wear one, sort of, how to come on say this politely, where a great deal would be exposed. But now you get over it and you learn to enjoy it.
And what a fantastic thing you haven't got those bingo wings swinging in the breeze.
Oh really? That's. I think bingo wings are a wonderful thing, and you men need to get over it, frankly.
Well, I think you look terrific, and moreover, you sound terrific in this. Your voice is just so resonant and brilliant, and you can't really fake it with this because the accents made me nervous. They've nailed it. They've done a really good job.
I think they've done an amazing job. I was really surprised. One of my first experiences as I came through the door, I started a week late because there'd been a problem with my visa application, so I didn't have the normal first day, with the read-through and introductions, and so I sort of just came in and had a rehearsal call, and the ensemble were in the music room practicing the first number, I think, with these full-on Geordie. It was so weird. I was on 42nd Street, and there were these bunch of Americans, all, William Conacher, the dialect coach, who's worked with the show right through, has done a lot of work. We made some deliberate adjustments for the American audience, not for the actors, but for the audience, to make it, because even the English ears find, some of the more extreme dialect forms of Geordie difficult to understand. But I have to agree with you. I think they've done an absolutely amazing job. I don't think people need to, English people visiting New York don't need to fear that side of things at all.
What a thrill for you to being a sellout show that's had rave reviews here on Broadway. You deserve every minute of it because you're such a big star, and it's been a real pleasure talking to you, Haydn. Congratulations on being you, because you're one of those few personalities and a big star both of TV and musical theatre, and enjoy your run here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.